Oh, and before we start, before I open, I'm just going to open with an observation, and then we'll just take a moment. I'd rather talk about this before we get into the pose because it'll be a little bit chatty. But actually, yesterday and this morning, I was listening to this interview on Fresh Air of Twyla Tharp, the most amazing mover dancer. She's quite a powerful individual on many levels. She's 80 now. And I believe the interview was her promoting a new documentary, but I didn't catch so much of that part. But two things that really caught my attention and spoke to me is she said that she had broken her metatarsal. And I immediately related to that because years ago I broke my metatarsal. But what she said is that she unknowingly did not let it completely heal before she started putting weight on it. So it was so interesting what she said. So by not letting it heal, by not allowing the just the healing process to be able to support the weight, what she said is it affected her whole skeleton. So this is someone that knows her body very well, and she intuitively and probably just directly felt that just that little bit of pressure, dancing and walking and moving on something that wasn't properly healed, it affected her whole skeleton. This is the fundamental of what we're exploring here in the nature of the myofascial system. So that was the first thing, very interesting. The second thing she said is that she studied with and danced with Merce and Martha back in the day. And she said very early on, both of them, Merce Cunningham and Martha Graham, became very arthritic. And one of the things that she attributed it to was because most of their movement, most of their training, most of their choreography, their styles were within the same vein. That they didn't really mix it. If you know their dancing and choreography, they didn't mix it up a lot. You can tell his style when you see it. You can tell her style when you see it. A lot of sort of stylized movement, you might say, repetitive movement. And so what's very interesting about this, in addition to that, now, if you really look in sort of the deeper studies of what arthritis is, they don't know as much about it as they think. And very often an arthritic condition is misdiagnosed to a certain extent as just being sort of a solidification or a crystallization of the fascia when it starts to dehydrate. But what's interesting about this is these two people that certainly were movers, but they were moving in more or less a repetitive way most of their life, was that the fibroblast cell, which is one of the first cells that we receive as an embryo, and one of its first functions is it puts out these very little wiry spider-like webs that will form a little opening container for the liver, a little opening for the diaphragm. It creates the sort of the substructure of where the organs will grow. This is the first function of this cell, these cells, the fibroblasts. But what they also do as we mature is when we become misaligned, when we participate in repetitive movement, they continue to lay down these strands, these fibrous strands of collagen and elastin fibers, the building blocks of fascia, to sort of support that misalignment, to support that repetitive motion. So it can sort of solidify us in a misaligned way. So to allow your body to move in a variety of ways. And ultimately, this is what we're doing in this practice. We're trying to press into those places where the fascia has become a bit dehydrated, solidified, and pulling us in a repetitive way out of alignment. So just really fascinating that the principles of the body are really deeply universal and really worth our time to study intellectually, but study as we move into the fabric of them somatically. Okay, so I told you it was going to be a bit chatty, so we'll just take a moment and see if we can slow me down and relax and open our a lovely practice. And let us open to the possibility that love and curiosity are sufficient. Now yoga. Okay, so let's come on up and either a rolled up blanket or the small bolster to begin, please. So if you roll up the blanket, I'm just going to suggest you roll it up to about the width of the small bolster. And you can make a nice size roll. We're just going to use it for support under the knees. So the width, don't worry so much about the height. And then let's take it and just place it under the knees at about the width of the roll or the width of the bolster. And then we'll just start, let the feet relax out. So we're not going to hold the feet in any sort of active position. We want as the feet flare out, it also lets the knees relax, and it also lets the hip flexors relax as well. So then just relax your upper body and really feel like we're going to allow some space between the vertebrae as we come forward. So relax your head and shoulders and just come forward slowly. And then if you start to encounter sensations early, put some support in front of you so you can really make sure you're not only able to really just slowly feel your way in, but make sure it's a good depth for you. So we're not pushing past that in any way. And the head gets to relax down, the shoulders relax. And this is one of the things also, what I was just speaking about, that becomes particularly tricky when we have any kind of limitation or injury, because we want to compensate for that. So we're going to move a little differently. And so what I'm saying is really the wisdom of these cells is that it's being drawn in its own incredible wisdom to these areas. As soon as we start to compensate, it's compensating as well. It's wrapping and weaving and holding. So we then are almost creating a new structure in the body. So we want to be particularly careful of these places in us that have received, over the years, yes, our whole life, these sort of layers of, from very slight misalignments to very obvious misalignments. And then the misalignment, we move in a misaligned way, it creates a little more misalignment. And this is what creates the patterns and the somatic behaviors of the body over time. So we're attempting to kind of free up that binding, if you will, that misalignment, if you will.
So let us come on up from here. We're going to come back to this, but let's do this in stages. So we'll just roll up. And then if you could interlock your fingers behind your back. And if this isn't possible and you have a yoga strap, you could use a yoga strap. I also wanted to show you this band. I really like these bands. I use this rubber band sometimes. And what this allows you to do is open the chest in this way. So obviously with the fingers interlocked, we're having to use all of this muscular strength and we're pressing into the scapula. So it's almost cinching things together, which is a lovely thing to do to the scapula. This, on the other hand, uh, opens a little bit more and it pulls the shoulder girdle open. So it's just nice. It's just a variation on what we're doing. It's also nice if you don't have the capacity to interlock your fingers, you can use this a little lower and still get the shoulder opener. But here we'll just interlock the fingers. If you have one of these big rubber bands, you can use that. We'll just bring the arms up. And again, don't force, just to kind of press up. And what I'm going to recommend here, instead of, I know the tendency is to want to roll the head around, but instead of doing that, if you can try to relax your shoulders and just gently pull the head up a bit. So it's almost like you're making space between the top of the cervical spine and the base of the skull. They're very close, but you're kind of pulling the base of the skull up a little bit, just to sort of lighten the head off the shoulders. And so you can relax your arms. And let's just remove the roll, the blanket, or the bolster, and keep the legs at that same angling. So the same angle as the width of the small bolster and the same forward bend. So this time, obviously, the restriction will be more in the hamstrings as we remove that bent knee support. So no problem if you don't go down as deep. If you feel yourself pulling the upper body away from the spine towards the feet, see if you can resist that temptation and just allow the head to more, it's going to sink in towards the knees. So this allows the not only the spine to curve more naturally and comfortably, but it allows those intrinsic back muscles to relax. And the more we can relax the muscular part of the body, this is relative, of course, the more the fascial restriction will receive the compression. Always very good to remember, and this could be sort of a reminder remembering, but it can also be a deeper knowing that it's very easy and interesting to talk about certain cells doing this and the fibers of the body reacting this way and injury and misalignment. But the reality is that
your whole system, your whole body has its own blueprint. And so it's working in a very unique and individual way. And so we're working with many, many different elements. So this is one of the very spacious things about this practice, is that we're not trying to put all the parts together. What we're simply trying to do is feel, sort of lean into what this individual blueprint is for us. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be linear, but to just really honor that, honor that we have this unique unfolding within our cellular structure, within our bones, with just the way that we respond to the environment. Intuition, this kind of intuition that we're pointing to, it really cannot be taught, but it can be pointed to. We can start to remember it. We can start to relax enough to just let it start to flow in and out of us, if you will. Okay, so let's come on up from here. And we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to interlock the fingers behind the back, or whatever version you're using. Relax the shoulders initially. We try to keep the elbows relatively straight. So it's not like we're trying to, push past where we think things should go, but just using this little bit of muscular strength just to ease into these tightnesses, these restrictions, these contractions, the way that your body might be holding some energy or density. And then this time, indeed, again, once you've relaxed the shoulders and you've allowed the head to at least feel like it's not completely sinking into the shoulders, you can bring the chin up a little bit. Just a little micro movement of the skull here is nice to draw you a little bit deeper into the neck muscles. And again, let's relax the arms. And we're going to go back to the way we started. So either that roll or your small bolster, again, at the width of the bolster, and the same thing. Legs will be relaxed, feet relaxed open, soft, relaxed lower spine, relaxed upper spine, and just ease yourself into it. And just to be clear, when I suggest that we all have this individual blueprint, I'm not merely talking about your genetics or your DNA. That's a part of it, a very small part of it. I'm really talking about everything that has made up your life to this moment. Your birth and your childhood and all of your influences and all of the challenges and all of the joys and just the way that you take in life that registers in this complexity of the soma. And this is one of the primary functions of yoga, just to sit with this body, to sit with this somatic complexity, and just simply be with it. Sometimes asana means to sit with, and not just to sit with a pose, but to sit with oneself. And so how we allow ourselves to relax into the fabric of ourself, whether it's mentally, emotionally, or physically, this is really, this is the unique part, because what's arising will be unique to you. Good. So once again, let's come on up from this. Just roll up gently. And this time, what I would invite you to do is just lie down on your back and bring your knees up towards your chest. But instead of pulling them in as we usually do, just straighten your legs out. So your feet you're looking right at your feet. Your feet are right above your face or somewhere close there. And then be careful with this. What I'm going to invite you to do is just open the legs out side to side. So there's a nice amount of weight here that's pulling into the hips. And just allow the weight of the legs to do that, to pull into the hips. And you can even hold, if you need to put the hands under the knees or under the thighs, if this doesn't feel safe, not only the hip flexors, but also the groin area as well. So be very safe with it. And then let's do circles with the ankles. Yeah, so circles one way, and then circles the other way. And really check in and see how do your ankles feel? Are they feeling a little brittle and fragile, or are they feeling nice and supple? And then you can point the feet and flex the feet, and point the feet and flex the feet. And you can take a rest if you'd like. You're still letting the legs side to side, noticing how this feels. So very different, using gravity in a different way. So let gravity settle in than if we were sitting on the floor in a forward fold, because we don't have all this weight of the torso. Now we have the weight of the legs. So we're always trying to weave into these nooks and crannies in little different ways. And again, one more time, if you'd like to do these ankle circles one way, and then the other way. And then you can bring let's just bring the legs back up. Slowly, slowly. Bend the knees. And now a little bit of pulling the knees into the chest might be nice. Maybe swaying the hips, doing some circles with the hips. And then when you're ready, you can just relax the legs out. We'll take a little rest here after this first thing. Okay, so let's come on up. And if you have the small bolster, I would prefer you use the small bolster and a roll. So we're gonna make a roll. And you see, I'm gonna re-roll this because my roll has kind of flattened out. So best to have a roll. If you don't have the small bolster, then just use 2 rolls. So roll up a couple of blankets, a blanket and a towel. And I won't roll it all the way because I'm compensating for how much compression I want in my lower back. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put I'm going to sit in front of the rolled blanket. And I'm going to put the small bolster behind it. So I have 2 props here. I have a rolled blanket and a small bolster, or 2 rolls. Yep. And we're going to sit in front of it. And we're going to let this compress into the lower back. It's good to hold it in a bit just so it doesn't separate, and check in every little descent here, every little couple of inches of descent. So you're making sure that it's okay. This is safe for you. Feet on the floor till the head reaches the floor. It's not okay for your neck having the chin this high over the forehead. Then incrementally bring the forehead up. Even is okay, but we don't want the forehead above the chin. Yeah, so even is good, preferably chin above the forehead. And then when you're able to, oh yeah, we'll let the legs relax out. Good. So we've got it very firm in here. Buttocks on the floor, 1 roll in the lower back, the second roll or the small bolster pulling into the lower mid spine. Yeah, so we've got a lot of compression and a bit of traction here as well. So someone asked me a question the other day. I was uh, just trying to describe the nature of this yoga, the nature of this yoga, just beyond the anatomical and mechanical benefits. And I was just talking about really slowing down. And the question was really, is there really any benefit in slowing down except for just a temporary rest and a temporary rejuvenation? Is there a deeper value to slowing down? And so sometimes these inquiries come to me, and I slow down myself because many years ago I took in a very deep teaching that we always teach what we have to learn. So instead of just answering it, I spent some time to really contemplate it. And what I came up with is that one of the many values, one of the deeper values of genuinely slowing down, and I just mean this in, again, it will be unique to you, unique to your blueprint of unfolding. So I'm generalizing here, but a deep value of slowing down is that we can begin to avoid certain, I don't want to say challenges, but let's say misfortunes and unwanted dramas by anticipating them, if that makes any sense. So oftentimes, we're moving so quickly, we're so internally wound up and busy and stressed and distracted that we're moving into situations where ultimately we don't want to be. So the capacity and the quality of slowing down, knowing how to genuinely slow down, lets us anticipate. It lets us anticipate certain things. Yes. And this is like a fine maturing process. So this is something that we can really contemplate. We can really begin to embody. And even when we're moving quickly, even when we have activities and we have responsibilities, we can have this inner balance where there's still a deep center, a deep groundedness in slowing down. So we don't get pulled into, we're not reacting into misfortunes and unwanted dramas, you might say. So very simply, what I am going to invite you here is to leave that, let's leave the left leg just extended out, and we're gonna just pull that right leg up and in. And anywhere on the inside of that left leg, you could put the sole of the foot, but you may want to put it under a little bit. I wouldn't put it on top necessarily. And then we'll let that right leg relax down. And again, if it feels tender or unsafe for the hip or the psoas, you could pull a bolster under it. So we're really using now the weight of the right leg to get into this, just this interesting area. You may even feel this in the piriformis a bit. Maybe you'll feel it in the psoas. It's not quite pulling on the psoas, but it's there, the hip. And we'll keep that left leg straight. The right leg is bent up and in, the right knee folded out. So then whatever is arising, and we have an endeavor to explore slowing down or quieting inward, always the yogi goes to the breath. We allow the breath to become calm. We allow the breath to naturally deepen, and we allow the breath to slow down. And then we have space, and we have space to explore what is it that is drawing us into a velocity that may not be in alignment. Good. So let's straighten out the right leg and let's draw up the left leg. So same thing, we're going to just allow the left knee to relax and just allow this left foot to find its way either on the side, or you could tuck it a little under if you'd like. You could bring it all the way up, or you could bring it more to the knee or the calf. Let it just rest and float there, or if it goes all the way to the floor, that's great. Or you could prop it up with some blankets or a pillow. One of the ways that we can explore slowing down the breath is to imagine that you are filling up your entire body. So full body breathing. Often the breath gets restricted not just to the lungs, but to the top third of the lungs. So the bottom third just becomes stale and stagnant. So I'm breathing into my entire body, the entire envelope of the dermis, and I'm exhaling and emptying, completely emptying, allowing any air on the bottom part of the lungs to be expelled. So then we have room for fresh oxygen. So a very simple transition here, if you will. We're going to bend the knees and put the feet on the floor, as we always do, to be safe in a backward bend. And just either slide or shimmy your body back. So we're now going to bring the pelvis. And we don't really need both of them. So you can just come to that first one if you'd like. That's probably best. Yeah, just come to the first one. The second one can stay there for support. It's not really necessary. But we're just going to bring the pelvis, the sacral area, on top of the first one you come to. And then again, we'll let the legs relax out. Also, if this feels like there's almost nothing and your pelvic area is feeling nice and supple and open, you could elevate the hips and put a pillow under there. If you have another bolster, another rolled blanket, if you want a little bit more height. So a little bit more height, obviously, now we will be pulling on the psoas. So just do this to your, your personal preference and condition here. And then we'll let both legs relax out here. And back of the head pretty much on the floor. Again, we don't want the chin tucking down, but we want the upper spine relaxed. And one of the tremendous benefits of allowing yourself to explore, slowing down, and really cultivating an inner sense of quiet is then any activity, any occupation can be your practice. Then all of life and everything in it becomes your teachers. So we can become increasingly less reactive. We can, from this place of quiet, one of the benefits of moving through our activity, our occupations, from this sense of inner quiet, inner centeredness, is that it often gives us more options. So if we're just bouncing off the world or bouncing off others, it becomes this bouncing becomes a kind of vibration that it just has an inherent tension in it. So we can then, by slowing down, we can begin to modulate the kind of tension that we're involved with, even if the situation or the circumstance or the person is vibrating at a higher tension. We can slow that down, slowing the breath down, internally feeling grounded and centered. And then, like I said, just to have more options. And this doesn't mean that in situations we have to, sit down cross-legged and begin to meditate. No, I'm talking about something incredibly subtle in some ways. It's just allowing ourselves to feel this inner sense of slowness, turning down the commentary that's not necessary, the internal dialogue, and just feeling that we are supported in the presence of all life. Even in relationship to our own discomfort, physical discomfort, we can slow down our reaction to that. We can slow down the habits that we continually superimpose on any sensation. Be able to relax, certainly feel it, not ignore it, but then see, do we have options? What is the best path of exploration? What is the best and the deepest way I can listen to this, very intelligent message that my body is giving me? So the same thing here. This time I'm going to invite you to keep the right leg extended out. And we're going to keep that support under the pelvis. However, this time when you bring the left leg up and in, you'll have a little bit more space. And now you can indeed put it either under the knee, the back of the knee, or under even that upper right thigh.
So this is going to give you just a little bit more angle, but play with that. Maybe not for you, but maybe. So kind of play with where you put the foot. And then again, we're going to allow that left knee to relax down. So a lot of now changes of the angles here, a little bit more pullings, just be sensitive to that. And you may feel this coming off the lumbar spine a bit. That would be the psoas on the top of the hip. That would be the psoas. And this really is the incredible beauty of being human, that it's never really one or the other. It always is that we are you know, dancing with this vibrancy and aliveness and this movement, but also resting as formless presence. And this is this is one of the consequences of of yoga, to be able to sit and see that this incredible aliveness and vibrancy is within us and without us. And at the same time, we are always, always resting as this formless presence. And this play and dance of both of them is what makes being human so exquisitely beautiful, and at times exquisitely painful. Right, so we can switch the legs now. You can relax that left leg out and just draw that right leg in. And again, just be curious where you place that foot under that left knee or under that left thigh. And if you are needing some support, put something under that right leg as it relaxes to the right. And we'll spend some time here. It's so interesting too, when we do bring even just a little bit of consciousness to our breathing, that the breath can be very mechanical and we can explore it from that perspective. The breath can also be very energetic and we can explore it from that place. But also the breath can be very mysterious. You know, here's something that we do all the time, whether we are conscious of it or not. And how mysterious is that? That there's a presence or an intelligence that just keeps breathing with or without us conscious of it. So mysterious, yes. Energetic, yes. Physical, yes. So you can straighten out that right leg. And this is when we get to bring the knees up with this lovely compression under the pelvis. So both knees coming up to the chest. And go slowly here. Let's take some time here to use some passive movement. And this may be plenty. You may just want to stay here and rock a little bit and sway a little bit. Or you may want to, this is also, especially when you've already got the hips off the floor a little bit, this is often a time to see if you can move all the way into a forward bend here out of that slowly. So that would mean the knees coming on either side of the head. You can hold the hips, you could relax the arms, interlock the fingers and open the elbows out. You can kind of sway with this as well. So just kind of play with this. And this is another position, just bringing the knees over the head. That's right up there with standing on one leg with your eyes closed. Just incredibly powerful for your hormonal system, your chemical balances, your metabolism, your thyroid. It's just a really incredibly therapeutic position to compress this frontal space from the digestive area right up into the skull, really. So take a little bit of time here and move out of this pelvic compression slowly. And then from there, when you're ready to come to a rest, then we will take a rest now after all of that. So I compiled this this little list here that I would like to share with you. I was thinking, I was just thinking really about the sort of the variety of spiritual traditions that present themselves and how it can either create just a beautiful alignment with us or a sense of dissonance with us. So I've been thinking about that quite a bit.
But I think at the essence, or the most fundamental, is that all of these traditions have one thing in common, that the fundamental nature of each one of us is identical with the fundamental nature of the universe. The fundamental nature of each of us is identical with the fundamental nature not only of the entire cosmos, but everything that we can perceive. So I made a little list because different traditions have different ways of expressing this. And I'm sure that this list is incomplete, but I'll just share this list with you. And you may recognize a few or all of them. Atman equals Brahman. I and my mother are one. Nirvana equals samsara. Emptiness is form. I am that. Consciousness is all. There are not two things. Sat Chit Ananda. So yes, on some level, and this may be very obvious, that the nature of these asanas, the pace that we move, inherently allows the soma to slow down. But if the mind is moving quickly, if the mind is preoccupied, if the mind is grasping to whatever it is that arises, then we can also begin to slow that down as well. And I think just as we move into joints and we move into muscles, our underlying principle is to allow and not to force. I think the same thing with the mind. If we can just allow, if we can allow the way that the thoughts form and our attachment or non-attachment to them, and just allow it to be, give them the space they deserve, give them the respect they deserve. It doesn't mean that we have to get entangled. So the slowing down is a very beautiful and personal process of slowing down mind and slowing down body, allowing the emotions to relax. So let us come on up, please. If you will, make your way up. And I want to begin with the open square position. So yeah, I usually advise if you don't have, if you just have a mat or something that's not soft, for this position, I often advise having a little softness just for the ankle bone. So let's begin by bringing the left leg in front, and we'll then put the right leg in front of that. So it's just a nice open position. Yeah. But before we come into the forward bending part, what I would like to suggest also, so just set up this for coming into the forward bend, yeah? And then take the right hand and just support yourself on the right side. So you're kind of leaning to the right a little bit. If indeed this may be a little challenging for your wrist, you could bring a couple of pillows or a bolster, and you could lean on the bolster. Uh, what I would also like to suggest is to keep the shoulders even with the hips. So we're going to come laterally to the side, but not to lean forward and not to lean back. So either supporting yourself with a bolster on the right side, or just putting the hand there and using the right arm, and then just bring the upper body over. So trying to keep the neck, the whole torso in alignment with the hips. So we don't lean forward, we don't lean back, we don't let the chin drop down too much, we don't raise the chin. But just this nice, even lateral flexion. And the hand there, or the hand on the elbow on the bolster, is really just a support to make sure you're not going a little bit too deep too quickly. So just take some time to ease into this. Yeah, so it's nice to mix in these lateral flexions of the spine with the forward and the back. And then if you'd like, it's nice here to take this left arm and bring it over in alignment with the spine. So this is like an extension of the spine, but not to drop it down like we're going to touch that right hand. Extend it up and out. So almost as if you're going to try to touch the floor like 6 feet away. Try to keep the elbow a little, you bend it a little bit, but as you can see here, just a lovely way to open up the rib cage. So the mobility of the rib cage, not only the movement vertically and the movement horizontally, it's just really nice to start to make room for just the volume of air. Yeah, so just a bit more here. See if you can just really let gravity draw you in. No need to brace. If you find yourself bracing or going into a bit of protection mode, always back off a little bit. Just find that approach, find that edge that you feel really safe, and you're just exploring your experience as it is. We don't want to be wishing it wasn't happening or being afraid we're not going to maintain it. Good. So we can relax out of this now. So we can bring that left arm up. Yeah, right? So just a little movement here, maybe a little sway. And then the same thing on the other side. So nice and slow, left hand supporting you or on a pillow or bolster. And we'll just relax the right arm for a moment. I just want to come laterally. So we're bringing the neck, left ear to left shoulder. We're leaning into it as much as we can. Notice where you feel it. And try to stay sensitive to the first layer of sensation. And again, we're trying to keep the shoulders pretty even with the hips, so we're not leaning back or forward. Trying not to let the chin drop down too much. And then if you'd like to add the extension of the arm, the right arm comes up and over, and it's just pulling you up and out and over, so you're reaching for something across the room, not down by the left hand. And again, use any resistance, stiffness, contraction, achiness, pain. Use this as a guide. Use this as something to listen to. It's there to help you, not to hurt you. It's interesting. Pain is not there to hurt you. Pain is there to help you, to guide you, to inform you. Good. So again, let's relax that right arm. Come back up to a straight spine. Good. And then we'll come forward from here. So again, nice open position, angle the feet, legs, however you would like. Soften and relax the lower back, and we'll just sink into this open square position. it's very interesting, fascinating, really, when we really start to examine what a thought is. So, as far as I can tell, a thought is merely a little spark, a little spark of electricity, and a mixing of chemicals. And this spark of electricity and this mixing of chemicals produces visualized imagery, something we can visualize as an image. And again, this is unique to all of us. You show all of us right now a painting or a photograph, and that spark of electricity and that mixture of chemicals will image differently for all of us. So we ease into the physical body and we feel this, this flow of movement and circulation and tightness and breath. But the same thing, we can lean into the thoughts themselves. They're not tangible. They're nothing that we can hold on to for very long, although some of them do seem to linger. But even that, the form and the imagery is always shifting. So at some point, our contemplation is where we lose interest in the content of the thought, and we're much more interested in the thinking itself. What is this process of thinking? What is this relationship between being conscious and what we're conscious of?
Good. So let's come on up from here.
And so there's two ways that you can go with this. Well, three ways that you can go with this. If this was interesting, you can just repeat this. We're going to do this again. You could bring that right leg up onto the left leg and just tighten up the square. This will bring a little bit more into the knees, at least for me it does. Or if you'd like, you could bring a pillow or a small or big bolster in front and elevate this right leg. Yeah, so then it's very, very different than just having it on the left leg. This is much more even. Shoulders, lower back, knees. This obviously brings us into this right side in a very interesting way. So those three choices: stay with the open position, close it up if you'd like, or elevate it to whatever height is your preference. And again, we'll come back into this forward bend. But I certainly do not mean to minimize the power and the creativity of this thinking process that seems to happen in the mind, because it's a little bit tricky, because what it does is it gives us the appearance, it is apparent from thinking that there's a continuity, that the thoughts that come from our past have a flow, a continuity to the present, and the thoughts that we project to the future have a continuity into the future. This is a trick where we're only experiencing now. So any memory, any thought that you have years and years and years ago, pick your favorite memory or your worst memory, you're recalling that memory only now. And whatever lovely events you are projecting into the future, or any fears you're projecting in the future, you're only doing that now. So the continuity that the thoughts and the mind present to you are illusory. And so this gives us more incentive to disengage, at least temporarily, from the content and be more curious about this process. And so then we can start to discern a little bit more, even when we say mind, that mind then just becomes the screen where these thoughts then appear and disappear. Mind consciousness, thoughts appearing, a little spark of electricity, a little mix of chemicals, but it's always happening in the present. And this is just something you can verify. And this, again, helps us to slow down and become grounded. And I was going to say to not take them so seriously, but I think that's a very personal thing. We don't want to superimpose that, because sometimes our thoughts are very important to lead us into different contemplations and explorations. So again, the thinking process is very, very powerful, and to be honored and to be respected, but to not be fooled by it.
So let's come on up from here. And let's just take a bit of a rest. And I'm going to suggest to put your legs up for this rest. So just something, a bolster or some nice pillows, and just elevate the hips, since we've just been squeezing into them so much here. So we'll just lie down for just a bit and elevate the legs here and just relax. Just really, as soon as we elevate them, we feel the femurs release out of the hip, not come out, hopefully, but just release a bit out of the hip sockets, and they're very nice. So let me just ease into this just a little bit more, because this is very interesting to start to, as we're observing the various processes, and if we're observing the process of thinking. So one of the things that we can really bring into our contemplations is the whole conceptual framework of a belief, something that we believe.
And so the belief, the foundation and the structure, the scaffolding of a belief is simply a collection of thoughts that we have put together, and they become consistent, and we hold them consistently, and we believe them. We have a choice to believe them or not to believe them. So one of the things that we can investigate is, at a certain level, the beliefs are informing our behaviors and our patterns. Our beliefs are informing our behaviors and our patterns. So once we start to investigate a belief and possibly either rearrange some of the thought structures it's built on or remove them, then we get to experience, do the behaviors and the patterns start to change as well. And so this is why the foundation of yoga is this open presence of consciousness, this idea that nothing, everything is really the same thing. Because we can observe this, we can observe how is it that, and not just consciously, but often unconsciously, I have built a structure of beliefs. The structure of beliefs on some level are informing my patterns, informing my behaviors. Is there something that I can investigate there? Am I open to questioning that? And consciousness doesn't care. Consciousness is just saying, yes, whatever is arising, investigate it. Whatever is arising, what is your experience of what is arising? It's really quite beautiful. It's really quite beautiful because it allows us then to it allows us not only to personalize our exploration, but to validate it for ourselves. So we don't have to be holding beliefs that may or may not be true, that may or may not be factual. And this sometimes can be very uncomfortable. So the yin approach is to use comfort in the physical body as a way to explore, but also sometimes if our most cherished beliefs get challenged, that can be very uncomfortable as well. And are we willing to sit in that discomfort? Are we willing to explore ourselves at this very subtle, nuanced level between our patterns and our behaviors and our beliefs? Okay, so let's come on up. And so let's do the same thing, but we'll do it on the other side. So we'll bring the right leg in, and we're going to start with the square position with the left leg in front open. And let's do the side to side again, just because I think it's so lovely, and it's an area, we go over the bolster sometimes, but this is a little bit more expansive as opposed to compressive with the bolster. So with the left leg front, let's lean over to the left. Yeah, so same thing, just try to keep the torso even with the hips. Let the left ear come to the left shoulder. First, establish your range of motion in the lateral flexion. Then, if you're ready, if you'd like to add the arm, so we're supporting with the left, we're stretching up and over and out to the left with the right arm, trying not to let the chin drop too much. Oh yes, I think this was a worthy endeavor to do again. And obviously, in our context, there's some muscular energy being presented. So we never hold anything with muscular energy with these longer holds, because the muscles will just fatigue. You may even be feeling it now. So let's come on out of it. So the yin, the approach to the yin is to have the muscles relaxed, stay the long period of time, receive the compression. Very different, as we can feel. So same thing, we'll lean over to the right side, bring the torso over, bring the head over. And then we'll bring the left arm up and over. So bringing the arm up and over too helps if you've sunk into this right side a little bit, you can kind of pull out of that. So we're kind of pulling the waist out of it. And then the left side up and over. Good. So let's soften out of this. Come back up to a straight spine, and we'll gently come forward. So we're in the open position now, and we'll come forward from here. And actually, everything that I'm saying about thoughts, we can also apply it to emotions, because the separation between an emotion and a thought, it just simply does not exist. So when we get into the substratum of the body at this level of these chemical and hormonal and electrical synaptical connections, we might say that the emotion is just a juicier part of thought. So they seem different and they can have different qualities, but they're not. And it's what's so interesting about this is it's only thought that can fool us into thinking they're separate. It's thought that fools us into thinking everything is separate. So this is the unification. This is the unification of yoga. and why we slow down, we take a rest, we question the content and the validity of the thinking, to see that yoga is just this unification, really, of these seemingly perceptual opposites. It's not real, but oftentimes we need to relax and we need to feel this energetic, open, alive presence that we are, and reinforce that and identify with that. So let's come on up from here. And so again, maybe you want to open the knees out, but I'm going to invite you to the same three choices. So you can either stay in the open position, which is lovely if that was interesting, and maybe you did if you knew you were going to, or you can bring the left up onto the right, or you can elevate the left with some height. And then just relax. Forward. If this doesn't seem right to you or plausible or has possibly challenged one of your cherished belief systems, that the separation between thinking and emotions doesn't exist, please do not and never take my word for anything, but try to find it, explore it, see if you can find a boundary. And this is one of the beauties about relaxing, when so much of our reality is based on what seem like rigid boundaries. Living within this incredibly apparent sense of separation, see if you can find a boundary between your body and your breathing, between your mind and the pulsing of your heart, between what you feel very deeply emotionally and how it reverberates physically. See if you can actually find a boundary. Good. So let's come on up, please. And let's take a rest after all of this. And I thought I could find something relevant to what I'm talking about. So I'm going to share this short reading with you. This is from Dean Johann from Job's Body, but I believe it's him quoting a book called Molecules of Emotion by Candace Pert. But it's really very beautiful, and it articulates so beautifully what I've been talking about in a much more comprehensive way. So, rest and listen if you'd like, but no need to listen too directly. I like to speculate that what the mind is the flow of information as it moves among the cells, organs, and systems of the body. And since one of the qualities of information flow is that it can be unconscious, occurring below the level of awareness, we see it in operation at the autonomic or involuntary level of our physiology. The mind, as we experience it, is immaterial, yet it has a physical substrate, which is both the body and the brain. It may be also said to have a non-material, non-physical substrate that has to do with the flow of that information. The mind, then, is that which holds the network together, often acting below our consciousness, linking and coordinating the major systems and their organs and cells in an intelligently orchestrated symphony of life. Thus, we might refer to the whole system as a psychosomatic information network linking psyche, which comprises all that is of an ostensibly non-material nature, such as mind, emotion, and soul, to soma, which is the material world of molecules, cells, and organs. With information added to the process, we see that there is an intelligence running things. It's not a matter of energy acting on matter to create behavior, but of intelligence in the form of information running all the systems and creating behavior. So this is so beautiful, intelligently orchestrated symphony of life. So then, my friends, I think the real question is, how do we consciously weave in to this intelligence? So even for the moment, if we just surrender to this idea that there is this intelligence running things, and as this quote makes clear, it's weaving into every nook and cranny of our existence and often below the conscious level. So it would seem to me for our certainly our healing and our deepest sense of well-being, but possibly even for our awakening, how do we then begin to consciously weave into this intelligence that is inherent within ourselves and our being? And if you're asking me, the only thing I can really come up with is yoga. So I would like to give you two choices here. Uh, and just as a side note, one of the reasons that maybe you've noticed that I do give a lot more choices than maybe I used to do in person. And the reason for that only is because I can't see all of you. So I don't really sort of energetically see what's really necessary or going on. So I just try to cover more bases by giving choices, and also to encourage you to sort of intuitively put your body where it needs to be. Yeah, the fundamentals of this are so simple. So just trying to hold maybe a little bit more space for you to make choices if that's what your body's calling for. Always listening for the invitation of the body. So the first choice would be uh, so yeah, I'm using the big bolster here, but if you don't have the big bolster, you can just use some pillows that support the torso. So you can just line up some pillows and sit, and this will work just as fine, especially this is a firm pillow, and it obviously is going to support even the longest of torsos, but I'm going to do this with the bolster. So simply, we're going to pull this in and snuggle the lower back and relax the legs out. Yeah, you could if you wanted to. I'm not going to recommend it, but if you would like to bend the knees back, uh, that's a whole other story. But just a nice backward bend here, really to kind of balance between more restorative and yin with this level of pressure. Maybe not for everyone. So this would be the first choice. The second choice would be just to go to the other end of the spine, and you would sit on the bolster. Yeah, sit on the bolster and place the mid back at the end of the bolster. So obviously, yes, going to the other end, and then sliding downward to either the back of the head, or you could go all the way to the shoulders here. Oh, yeah, they're both good. We need another hour to do both of these. Oh, so either one of these is just lovely. And if you don't have the big bolster and you want to do the mid spine compression, you can just fold up your blanket so it makes a nice pad, and then you can press that. So you can go into whichever one you're going to choose, the lower version or the higher version. So if you're doing the lower version, you would do like I showed with the pillows. This is the alternative if you don't have the bolster, just to set the just the shoulder blade area on this and relax over. It's the same effect, really. Yeah, so either one of these. maybe to come full circle to what I was initially sharing, that not only that the way that we move, not only repetitive motion and response to injury, but all of our habits, the way that we think, the way that we feel, all of these things are shaping our fascia. So part of this intelligence that I read from, this is clearly manifest in the fascial system, this fibrous connective tissue that is ubiquitous in the body. There's no part of your body where it is not. And it's receiving your life, and it's shaping your fascia. So a big part of what we're doing is not only opening these pathways, these fascial restrictions, these places of density, but as we open them, we're entertaining the possibility that we can allow them to reshape along more balanced and more accessibility to aliveness. So this is what I meant really before about the beliefs and the patterns and the behaviors, that it's not just a yoga pose in and out, and now I've opened something. I start to open something, but I open to, how do I move? How do I heal? How do I think? How do I feel? And this is very powerful. And this is a very profound study, that we don't live in a static environment. We don't live in an environment that is not changed. We live in an environment that is incredibly susceptible to plasticity, extremely, it's changing whether we like it or not. And so how can we consciously open to the changes that we want to feel? And I mean that in the depth of our bones, in the weaving and the living matrix of our fascia. And so as we use these asanas to hold space for ourselves, and as we allow the fabric of the physical to become more just vague and porous and relaxed, we certainly want to include compassion towards ourselves for our process, a pristine degree of patience with ourselves. And I think with the mystery of this intelligence, a certain humility. And then this is a practice, a yoga that is really able to cultivate an intimacy with ourselves. So if you are still in your version of the back bend and you would like to stay there longer, please feel free to do that. If you would like to begin to move out, you just put your feet on the floor and have some movement. Make sure your muscular tension feels safe enough to move. And you can roll out and come into either a counter pose if you prefer, or come into a shavasana. Or if you want to come out and sit up, and we will take a few moments here to close our practice. So let us open to, as we close, to compassion, patience, and humility. Namaste.